So reviews are everything when it comes to conversion rates on Amazon. And obviously, if you get a bunch of negative reviews, that can be a problem. But did you know that there are certain negative reviews that you can actually get Amazon to take off of your listing if you know how to do it correctly? That's why I'm super excited to have Shane Barker. He is the owner of Trace Views. And that's what you guys do, right? Help sellers remove negative reviews from their listings.
That is it. Yeah. We've been doing it for about 5 years. For 2 years was a lot of R&D and testing and trying to see if we could crack the code. In the last 3 years, this is my early humble brag, is that we have over 500 clients, removed over 13,000 critical reviews for sellers. So I'm very proud of that number, and we're looking to obviously double that and help as many sellers as possible in the Amazon space.
Amazing, amazing. So with that, I know we were talking before the show and you were saying, hey, one of the problems that a lot of sellers have is they are not filing to get the reviews removed correctly. So I'm sure we're going to dig into that. But obviously there are some legitimate negative reviews, like as much as we would love to just, hey, Amazon, please take off all of the reviews. So why don't we dig into that? Like, what reviews can be removed?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, I'm agreeing with you. Like when you talk about negative reviews, not all of them are bad. I mean, there's actually some value in negative reviews, which is sometimes hard for owners and sellers to really let that soak in, because this is your baby, you launch it, and then you have people that aren't going to like it. Well, guess what? The reality is that there's going to be people that don't like your product. It just, once you get to a certain stature, if you're worried about people not liking your product, or if you start doing, branding on yourself, and then people start talking bad about you, like that just means you made it. I mean, really, at the end of the day, it means you're getting some eyeballs on there. You have to really refocus on that. That's not necessarily a bad thing. What we do is we're here to level the playing field, right? So for us, negative reviews are reviews that anything that violates Amazon's guidelines. That's cussing, mentioning pricing, FBA related stuff. Something was shipped late, something was broken, something was sold used, which obviously falls back on Amazon, with Amazon being the one that ships out. And then anything that's fraudulent, right? So we're talking about maybe where a competitor has a buyer's account and they're using that to attack you. And so our software is able to detect that, to be able to take a look at, if you sell creatine as an example, and you sell a creatine that's very similar to your competitors, and they're giving you just terrible 1-star reviews and giving your competitors 5-star reviews when the products are comparable, then those are the types of things we'd file an escalation case with Amazon. But most of the stuff we file on are things that are against Amazon's own rules. So if you have a review that's causing you some headache and you don't like it, and but it's honest, it's true, and it's a review, those aren't the ones we're going after, right? Like, what you need to do with that is take a look at that and be able to iterate and figure out how you're going to improve the product, because there is value in that. Everything I tell every seller this, like, I can guarantee you your first podcast, nothing against you, I've seen your podcast, you're amazing, was not as good as your podcast is today.
Oh, no.
Right? Like, there's no way. Yeah, it was terrible. The article that I first wrote on one of my sites, shanebarker.com, and I used to teach at UCLA. The reason I'm telling you that is I would show the kids, I say kids because they're kids to me, but my students, hey, this is the first article I wrote. And they're like, oh my God, that was terrible. It was absolutely hideous. But I kept that up there as kind of a learning point. Like, hey, that's where I started off. I would not be teaching at UCLA if they saw that first article. In fact, I don't even know why they hired me at that point, because I was like, my God, that article was written in crayon and it was absolutely terrible. Not really in crayon, but you get my point. Like, I just felt like it was so, like, just not great content. So yeah, I mean, the way I look at this is, if you launch a product, you're going to probably have, product 2.0, right? And that's valuable information. Now, I know, obviously, if it gets hits in the beginning, right, during a launch or something like that, that can hurt. Or if it's a Vine review, which is also something that we can get removed if it violates Amazon's guidelines. Those things hurt, but it's also a learning lesson for us, right? It's also something we can use as constructive criticism. We just want to even that playing field if somebody's attacking you, or if there's something that is against Amazon's own rules, and hey, we should be able to get those removed.
Yeah. Is there any way that you found like that is like the most common, or because oftentimes a lot of sellers will see a negative review and they're like, oh, I feel like, this is probably a fraudulent review. Or do you just, if you think it's a fraudulent review, do you recommend trying to get it removed? Because at the very worst, like, does that hurt you if it's not, in fact?
Yeah. So what you can do is you can look at Amazon's community guidelines, right? And you really want to base everything off of that, because that's the rules of the game, right? I mean, that right there, they lay out, hey, you can't cuss in a review. And if somebody uses the F word in a review, guess what? Well, you have a claim there, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're mentioning, obviously, the guidelines. Hey, this is your guys' own guidelines. This is a review. You want to make sure you're building out a detailed case there and filing that. The important part is know that you need to try to take the emotion out of it, right? Like this, I know it feels like, and maybe this person's attacking your business, but Amazon doesn't necessarily care about your business being attacked. I don't in a bad way. I mean, Amazon cares, but really what it comes down to is like Amazon is here to make a right decision. So you want to make sure you're not coming at Amazon sideways and saying crazy stuff. You want to say, hey, these are the rules that you guys, have implemented. This is somebody that's clearly breaking the rules. Guess what? This is the reason why it should be removed. And you really want to file on ones that are no brainers, right? I mean, obviously, if somebody uses the F word, we can all look at that and say, hey, that shouldn't be on the platform. If somebody says it's a crappy product, some people could say, hey, that's not supposed to be on the platform. It's still in violation, but it's not quite as erroneous as somebody that uses the F word. So I would start with ones that are the craziest ones, the ones that you're like, hey, out of 100 people, if they look at this, they're going to know that this is against Amazon's guidelines. Obviously our company does this, but I would absolutely recommend that somebody try to file them on their own, right? Without us. I mean, we're a paid service, right? We're not for everybody. We're not inexpensive. We're the people that get the reviews and understand the value of getting them removed, obviously don't have a problem with what they pay for us. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to, hey, try to do it on your own. I always ask everybody when we do a demo call, hey, have you tried to remove reviews on your own? If they say yes, well, then now we know that it's a pain point, right? Because they're reaching out. If they haven't done it, I encourage them to try it on their own. Like I would love for sellers to be able to remove reviews on their own. In fact, we have a little surprise. We can't say it yet, but we have a little surprise here at the end. You guys have to listen to the end. We can't just tell you guys what we're going to offer you all this fun stuff. I mean, Elizabeth wouldn't let that happen. You guys got to make it to the end.
You got to do the clickbait. You got to, keep the watch time up, all those good things. But yeah,
got to reel them in.
That's something that, I mean, again, we were talking the beginning of this and you were saying like, okay, the main thing that you've seen most of it tripped up is they're filing to have the reviews removed and they're doing it wrong. And that's one of the main reasons why people aren't having success. So I would love to dig into that. Like, what are the main things that you've seen, or what is best case or best practices when it comes to, like, okay, you identified something you see is definitely against the guidelines. How do you go about filing for that?
Yeah, a great question. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like Amazon has different departments that take care of different things, and that is constantly changing. Sometimes have move it over to a different department. So it's really hard sometimes to keep up on, the email address, and all of a sudden everybody uses the same email address and Amazon shuts it off. So once again, with what we do, we file thousands of cases. So we kind of know ahead of time if there's any changes because of the volume of cases that we file, obviously, fully compliant with Amazon. But what I would recommend is once in filing cases the right way, which is, I mean, obviously is what I always tell people is it's like building a house with a bad foundation, right? Your house could look amazing, but if it's on bad foundation, it's the same thing with this. When you're filing cases, if you file them wrong, no matter what you say after that, it doesn't matter. Amazon doesn't listen to you, right? Because you really need to file correctly. They have templates and they have certain things that you need to say in those templates to get Amazon's attention. And most people add on a lot of other stuff that doesn't need to be added in there, right? Amazon, once again, I didn't mean this, like Amazon doesn't care. But you have to realize if you get millions and millions of, emails a day, you have to be able to sift through stuff, right? And they have a certain format because they have to go, hey, we have to, they have certain, things for their employees. Hey, you have to get through so many emails or so many this. And if you make it complicated for them, it's going to be a lot harder to do, right? And so what we look at is like, you really have to follow that closely. And what we realized with a lot of sellers was, I mean, obviously we want the business, but I would love for people to be able to do it on their own. So it's like, here, like, let me show you how to do this the right way, right? Because that's usually the first step is once you mess up there, it doesn't matter anything after that. That's all noise at that point. So what we wanted to do was be able to create something that sellers can go in and at least start off filing the right way and have the information and have it all in there on exactly what's in violation, how it's in violation, why it's in violation, and then how they should be filing.
Got it. So if somebody doesn't want to be in violation, is there certain buzzwords? Is there like certain check boxes that you've noticed? Like, okay, when filing a complaint, I'm assuming it's opening a seller support ticket.
That can happen. Yeah, we do brand registry as well. We do vendor central and seller central as well. Really, at the end of the day, it comes down to the customer experience is a big thing for Amazon, right? I mean, we all know that if you don't have a good customer experience, that's Amazon is going to not look at that favorably. So, when you talk about your filing a case, you want to talk about how this affects the customer experience, right? Like this is not great because guess what? If somebody's going and reading this great review and then there's the F word in there, that takes away from the customer experience, right? And so and we just don't want that on the platform. So you got to think about Amazon consistently talks about the things that their KPIs, right? What do they look at? And so think about that and then how you can create a actual template with those KPIs, with the things that Amazon says. It's like doing a resume. So think about when you do a resume, if you're applying to be an SEO strategist, are you going to give them the resume that talks about you being a content creator? I mean, you can, but is that going to get you the job? Probably not, right? So what you want to do is look at the job listing as an example. If it's an SEO strategist and you want to include that in the title of your whatever this first paragraph, and all your experience needs to be around that. So it's the same thing with filing a case. If you're talking about this and you're filing a case on this, but you're talking about the wrong things, there's going to be a disconnect there. So you really want to tie that back in. And Amazon's constantly telling you, hey, these are the things that we look at. Okay, then what you want to figure out is, how does this review make it so that their goals are not being achieved, right? So that's what you really want to do. You want to reverse engineer that.
I like that. I like that. I like that. Because unfortunately, a lot of sellers, when they open cases, it's, oh, I'm experiencing this, I'm experiencing that, which 100% they are. Like, I get it. It is affecting your business, which is in a lot of cases is the seller's livelihood. So I get it. Emotions are there. It can be very, very difficult. But what you're saying is try and, if possible, I know it can be hard sometimes, the sellers are like, try and step into the lens of Amazon, what they care about. And one thing that they care about is a great consumer experience. You say what you want about seller support. There's a lot of, out there, but
Good conversation.
really the thing that they really do care about is the shoppers and their shopper experience. So you're saying, if you can go about it from that lens, like, hey, it's not following your guidelines. Here's the rule book. And also the reason why you have this rule book is because of the seller or shopper experience. Then that's sort of the good, I guess you would say, bones of filing or opening it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, it's like, not that Amazon doesn't care, but really what we're looking at is like, what gets Amazon to care, right? So when you're going to say things that also will affect them, that they go, hey, because they also have their own things that they need to look at, right? So if you're hitting on these hot terms and saying, hey, this affects this and this affects that and this affects that, and they go, well, shoot, then you're building that case for them. That's the reason why they're called cases, right? You're building a case on why that needs to be removed. And the more that you can tie it into their goals, then great. That's when things get real interesting. There's a reason why they have the guidelines. There are guidelines on their rules. So we explain that to them, and then you have certain terms and stuff that you can use. And you can even use some of the terminology they use in their guidelines, right? I mean, there's not a problem with quoting that or saying, hey, this is the reason why. I mean, I think if you're using the F word, that all makes sense why we're, that is obviously violating something there. But it's never hurts to remind them. What you don't want to do is build a case that's, 10 paragraphs long, and you don't need to go into crazy information. You need to hit home with it, right? Like, I don't need the whole, it's like an executive summary. If you want to sell your business, you want to get funding, not everybody wants your 30-page executive summary. Give me a one-pager. Give me the highlights of all the information, why it's in violation and what the reason for, and the reason why you think X, Y, and Z. And then when you do those filings, you're going to have a higher chance of once again getting those reviews removed, because you're really hitting on it. The customer service folks only have a few minutes, if that, to respond and make a decision there. So if you're making it difficult, then you guess what? It's just not going to happen, right? I mean, you got to be able to make it so you hit on all the points. They can make a decision and either remove the review or not remove the review, and then move on to the next one. And this is going to happen over and over and over. So make it easy for them.
I like that. So I'm gonna summarize tips, and then I have a couple questions. So the most obvious one is against community guidelines. You're saying speak from the lens of Amazon. And I love your tip about being brief and concise. Do you have any tips? So I'm wondering, like, when filing a case, I'm assuming it's pulling out the very specific. So instead of like, here's all your rules, here's a couple of the, guidelines that it's not applying to. And then in terms of the information you're giving them, are you like linking to the ASIN? And then how would you say, like, okay, it's this specific review? So I'm assuming it's like this specific product, this specific review, here's how it violates. Can you look into this, or are there any good tips of, kind of?
Yeah, once again, the easier the better, right? So you definitely, they're not going to, you don't go say, hey, go take a look at this review from this person. Put the link in there, right? Let them be able to click on it, make it very easy for them. They'll click on it, they'll go take a look. Once again, you want to build that case so they go and look at it and they go, hey, this person is absolutely right. You gave them all the facts. The thing is shorten, you talk about brevity, right? Talk about, it doesn't need to be, you don't want a lot. They don't have a lot of time. Make it short to the point, right? Like you want to make this as easy as possible for them to say yes. If you become too emotionally involved, or if you're, saying certain things, you're cussing, you're putting way too much information in there, short and sweet. Get in there short and sweet. And once again, just take a look at that. And what I would do, especially if you're emotionally charged, I'm an emotionally charged person. So I, early on in my days of doing things would, read things in the morning and go, God, I can't believe I sent that. I probably shouldn't have said some of those things. What I do now, or what I would do now, is I'd have somebody else read it, maybe have your wife read it, or your husband, or somebody that's not the business, that's not emotionally charged about it, that says, hey, what is your consensus of this? Really you don't need to put all that emotion in there. It doesn't add anything to the case. If anything, this person sees hundreds, if not thousands of cases. It gives them a reason to ignore you, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't want to do that. You want to give them a reason to support you because you're saying, hey, listen, this touches on all these things, and this is the reason why it should be removed. And you're going to have a higher success rate at that point.
I love that, because I know a lot of times when, you're trying to take emotion out of it, I talk to some sellers, or especially newer sellers, to be honest, it's like they want to sound professional, and oftentimes that ends up, like, if you go the opposite direction and you're wanting to sound professional, oftentimes you'll have a lot of qualifying words, or you'll write, paragraphs when it could be a sentence. So you're saying, like, keep it brief, specific, to the point. Obviously, you don't have to be completely cold, but it's almost like, here are the specific facts. Please take a look. Very brief, as concise as possible.
Yeah, facts and stats, and really lead with stuff that nobody can debate. I'll give you an example. If you want to use the statistics on, hey, this person, this buyer bought 5 of my products, gave me a 1-star review. Statistically, if somebody hates a product, are they going to buy a second one? No. Are they going to buy a third, fourth, and fifth? No. And guess what? We also noticed that they're also buying a competitor that has, once again, the same creatine that we have, very comparable formulas, right? But this was like, oh my God, they, had diarrhea, their leg fell off, and this one they ran their personal best. Like, how could that be, right? That just doesn't make sense. And especially, they usually write very, very crazy stuff where it's like over the top. Like, I've seen things where people are like, oh, I went to the emergency room. I'm like, taking creatine? Like, what were you, like, how much did you take? I don't know what was going on right there, but there's clearly something that you weren't doing right. So now things that take a little more, that are a little more nuanced with how to use things, but creatine, you just literally put it in water or whatever you put it in, you drink it. It doesn't need a big, you don't need a sheet on how to use creatine. Some things are a little more nuanced. It can take a little more, there could be more room for error because of how they use products. I get that, but something like a creatine or something is like, it's very basic on how to use it.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. So tips, take emotion out of it. I love your tip about getting somebody else who's removed from the situation to read it. That's always really helpful. Honestly, that's helpful regardless of
anything. Yeah. Just life.
Yeah. Keep it brief and then lead with facts. That's awesome. Is there any other parting tips or things that you think sellers would find helpful?
Yeah, I mean, we have great blog. I mean, like, honestly, we're writing about this all the time, just on how they can file things that we give a lot of tips, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's all we do is help, sellers remove negative reviews. So we have probably over 100, maybe 200 articles at this point that I'll talk about in the review space. So I would use our blog as a good reference. They can go in and search around and put in keywords and take a look at that. We have, things on how to do it, explaining how to do it. Our goal, once again, is to help sellers. So, we're always going to be there at the end of the day. If they want to come in and they want us to be able to file and take that headache away, I have no problem with that. But I would love to, I historically have always been a do-it-yourselfer. So when growing up, I was like, oh, I can figure this out. So, I understand that mentality to save a buck, to be able to figure it out on your own. That was, I call that Shane 1.0. Now we're at Shane 3.0. Now I'm like, I'll hire somebody smarter than me in a hot second. Like, I won't even think twice about it. But, if you want to try it on your own, that's usually, as you talked about earlier, the sellers that are just starting off, maybe they don't have a lot of money and they're, they don't have a lot of working capital. I totally get that. And I didn't want to leave them in the dust and say, oh, if you don't have money, then I can't help you. Like, that's not, I was raised by hippies in California. So I'm a hugger. So that's, I'm one of those guys. So it's like, I want to help. That my big thing is to help. And if it equals business for us, that's awesome. If it doesn't, they figure it out and they crack the code. That makes me even happier.
Okay, amazing. And with that, do you want to give one last tip? I know we kind of teased it earlier, but you were saying, which I really appreciate, that there is a very helpful resource that you guys have built that will help speed up the process even more for the DIYers out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we created a tool. It's called Amazon Review Checker. And so the goal of this, and we'll include this in the show notes, the idea of this is that you just click on it and it's a free tool. You can go in and put in your ASIN, or you can put in a link to your ASIN. What will happen is it'll create a report. Usually takes about an hour and a half, because we obviously have to pull the information and do all that. 100% free, doesn't cost anything. If it's a huge ASIN, then sometimes it takes a little longer, but you verify your email address. And what happens, you'll actually get a report, and that report will actually have links to the actual reviews where you can click on it. It'll have a little bit of the review. You can scroll over it. It'll pull up the whole review. And then it actually talks about exactly what's non-compliant about it. And what we do is we reference that against Amazon's guidelines. So it's literally something you could take as a report and you can file with Amazon. Also, in the top right-hand corner, you can't see it right now, but there's actually going to be a calculator there as well. And so if they want to get from like a 4.1 to a 4.2, they can toggle this little dot you'll see over, and that will tell
Mhm.
you approximately how many critical reviews you need to remove. So that also is a good indicator. That tool, a lot of people love the calculator. Historically, that's always been a tool that people only get when they actually pay for the service, right, on the
Mhm.
back end. So now what we did is we've offered that free, and so they can take a look at it and say, hey, I only have to remove 3 reviews. I think that's something I want to, I want to go after it. And now that I've got this report, now we're starting them off in the right direction, right? Now we're taking that guesswork out. Now you just have to be nice in your filings and include that report, and you should be good. But once again, you might have to file a few times because Amazon sometimes takes a little longer. But just know, a little perseverance, and you can make it happen.
This is all well, Shane. This has been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate it. And definitely, we will have links to the blog as well as that free tool in the description. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with the community.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me. You're doing an awesome job with the PPC stuff you do out there. I see you all day long on LinkedIn. You're absolutely crushing it. So congratulations on your success.
Thanks so much.